Well, patience is not a word that you think of when you think of race car drivers, that's for sure. But for the drivers in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo North American Series, patience is what they have needed. 123 days since they last competed, and that was at the World Finals in Jerez, Spain. And now it's time to knock the rust and the dust off. Welcome to Sebring, everyone. Brian Till with you, along with Ryan Marine, and absolutely gorgeous weather here in Central Florida. Time to go racing in Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America. Cars on the grid and ready to go and ready to tackle this iconic racetrack just due south of Orlando, Florida. About an hour and a half, well, sometimes two with the traffic we've got now. 17 turns, just over 3 miles. And just look at the names of some of the corners here at this racetrack. You can tell that the greats have been here. They have competed here. Great passing opportunities. The wicked, fast, and bumpy turn 1. Heavy braking down in turn 7. You can get it done in turns 10 and over to 13, tower turn, and then into the Sunset Bend, turn 17. Maybe that's where the biggest bumps are on the racetrack, and you completed a lap of Sebring. And for Ryan Marine, Ryan, I tell you, it's almost like watching PBR, I think. We're going to let the bulls out, and they're going to be bucking.
It's a wild ride, that's for sure, Brian, and that's part of the fun of Sebring. That's the allure of this place. The circuit, the pavement, pretty much unchanged since it was a B-17 training base back in the 1940s. First race held here New Year's Eve 1950, and everyone who is anyone in road racing has been coming to this place to test themselves ever since. It's a fantastic venue, 17 turns, 3.7 miles, and a great place to start a brand new season of Lamborghini Super Trofeo.
Cars now rolling out. The Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2, what an absolute beast, Ryan. Over 600 horsepower, 620 is what they claim. I think it can be even more than that. 6-speed sequential gearbox. You do have traction control, 9 different positions, but it doesn't work off throttle, so it's not like stability control that you might have in your street car at home. Take a look at the starting grid there on the side of the screen, and I think the other thing unique to Lamborghini Super Trofeo, Ryan, is the 4 different classes, but they're all driving the exact same type of car. Get an idea, I call them chiclets. They're up on the windscreen in the upper right to the driver, and there's also one on the bumper, but the different colors. Orange is a pro driver or a pro combination. Yellow, Pro-Am, green, Am, and blue, LB Cup, the least experienced drivers in the field. But like I said, they all compete in the same Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2.
And that's why you see the field totally mixed up. We've got a Pro and a Pro-Am car sharing the front row. We've seen Am-class cars feature towards the top 10 over the course of a couple of practices and qualifying as well for races here this weekend at LB Cup as well. Certainly when well driven, why couldn't they run at the same pace as the top cars? It is the same machinery, to your point, underneath. It's just driver age and experience in the crews. One other interesting element too, we talk mostly about 2 driver lineups, but there are some single driver lineups, and that adds to the complication, let's say, when it comes time to make the pit stops, because the single driver cars have to stay stationary in the pits for an additional 3 seconds to even the playing field with the 2 driver lineups.
And I think that's such a valid point. The 1 driver lineup, when you come in for that mandatory pit stop, somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes into the race, you know your car, you know the racetrack, so you're itching to get back out there. That driver in the 2 driver lineup that's getting in, he's got a little bit of discovery to do, and that's probably going to be worth 2 to 3 seconds in the opening lap or so. So I love that formulation there, and it has been heartbreaking at times. We saw races decided by that margin last year within even less than half of a second, that margin of victory, and it all went back to 3 seconds longer on that pit stop. But you talk about all mixed up, Ryan. You know what else is all mixed up? Drivers. We've got a bunch of new drivers in the series this year, and I think it shows just how relevant Lamborghini Super Trofeo is, not only in North America, but all around the world. You don't have to look any further than your pole sitter, Hampus Eriksson, and that name Eriksson should be familiar to anybody who loves motorsport.
Yeah, that's right. Shares the #1 car with Danny Formal, who will start race #1 here. But this is the younger brother of 2022 Indy 500 winner Marcus Ericsson. Even though the name is spelled with a K, it is the same family. Had a good laugh with them as Marcus and his dad are both here actually cheering on Hampus as he makes the move to North America. Raced in the European version of this championship, came very, very close to winning a world final title last year, but he's turned his focus to the North American motorsports scene, and he's loving the challenge that is Sebring so far. He laughed when I asked him what he thought about this place. He said, "I've never experienced anything quite like it."
I'm sure he hasn't. That's for sure. It is old school, like we talk about, the bumps, the pavement changes. They're different aggregates, and you see it right there as they come into turn 17. That's part of the bumps, but it also changes the grip level. The most important thing, we talk about those 4 different classes, you got to know who you're racing with. On pole is Ericsson in a pro entry, and outside of him, the 69, that's a Pro-Am entry, so you need to know who you're side by side with. Don't get mixed up in somebody else's business. You ready? Here we go. The green flag waves on the 2025 season, and they are off. 36 Lamborghinis down to turn 1, and you're gonna have to make it single file as you exit this corner, but I don't think they're paying attention to that.
No, still good cooperation through the field, able to keep it clean at least so far. Pole-sitting car still out in front. That car has been quickest in every session up to this point. Both practices, pole position for both races as well after sweeping qualifying earlier today.
Nick Persing aboard the number 8. Started in the 3rd position, dropping back a little bit. Already you've got these side-by-side battles. But again, you can look at those colors on those cars and see a lot of these cars pushing hard right now are in different classes. But Ryan, I think you want to take advantage of that. If you've got another class car right there beside you, if you can put him between you and your nearest competitor, you're going to want to do that. So especially in these opening laps, it doesn't really matter what class you're in. I think you want those positions because you can use them as a buffer.
And that track position carries with you, doesn't it? Even after the driver change. Problems further back in the pack, the 42 car. That's Adrian Kunzel off the pace, but seemingly picking it back up again. That's good news. In the meantime, cars still very squirrely here as temperatures aren't quite there yet. In the hand-cooked tires, they're coming up to temperature, coming up to pressure, but it's still a handful trying to put all of that horsepower to the ground.
2 races on the weekends for Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America, and run with IMSA for all of those. Great to see them here at Sebring, really stretching the legs of this Lamborghini Huracan down the back straightaway. Speeds well into the high 150s, low 160s, I would imagine, as they come into the braking zone for turn 17. And this is where that traction control is going to come into play over the big bumps as you enter the braking zone. Such a treacherous place here, trying to balance the car on the brakes, get those hand-cooked tires to get grip into that concrete that's been here since the 1940s. Find that grip, launch off the corner, and then down the front straightaway to turn 1.
That is the challenge of this place. Good opening lap from the pole sitter, Danny Formal, who really bounced back in a big way in qualifying. He's doing double duty this weekend, also running in the WeatherTech Championship, and he had a massive crash in practice earlier today for the WeatherTech Championship. Backed the car into the Armco barrier that caused a lengthy delay in that session. About an hour later, he had to be in his Super Trofeo car, hopped in, immediately was back on the pace, and stuck the car on pole. And Brian, you as a racing driver yourself, you can attest to it. Sometimes it's nice to get right back in a race car after something goes wrong, as it did for Danny Formal in the WeatherTech session earlier today.
Well, I think, too, for Danny Formal, he not only wanted to get right back on the horse, so to speak, the bull in this case, right? But I think the other thing is he wanted to make amends to his Wayne Taylor Racing crew and just say, I'm sorry for what I did there, guys. I'm going to make it up to you by going out and grabbing this pole position. That number 1 car was number 1 in every session we've had here this week, and it shows just how strong it is. Right now, though, Jaden Conrad Conright giving chase. And I want to talk about the Sebring 12-hour for just a minute, Ryan, and the reason I want to do that is because we talk about double stints a lot in endurance races. Look at the number 67 who runs in 3rd. That's Jason Hart aboard that number 67 entry, and he's basically doing double duty. He just completed a Porsche Carrera Cup race, got out of that car, crawls into this Lamborghini, and now he's at it once again. He's got to be exhausted.
Oh, you think so? But he's used to the heat, of course. He's a Texan, so this relatively warm afternoon into the evening won't be too uncomfortable for him. But you know what? He's also a guy who loves his racing. He'll love the chance to hop in the race car as much as he is here on this weekend. He's doing a tremendous job working with Conrad Geis, who we'll see in the second stint of this race. Conrad's a fun story we'll talk about as we go. It's the number 67 car, Blue Machine, at the front of this pack that we're talking about here with Jason Hart behind the wheel. I think this could be a really fun pairing this year as Conrad gets up to speed in these Huracans. He's only done one season of racing in anything prior to this, so it's a big, big jump for him. But he's been quick, and he comes from a family of racers. Plus, he's had Jason Hart as his coach now for a number of seasons, or now in the second season, I suppose. I think that really is going to pay dividends for him, having that familiarity as a coach now as a co-driver.
Well, I think you're right. That familiarity, having a coach is one thing, but when they are in the same car with you and can experience the same feedback and kind of measure what you're telling them versus what they feel, I think it makes it even better. I had a car slow off of turn 7. We'll get back to that momentarily. Danny Formal leads overall in the pro category. Jason Hart, like we talked about, in Pro-Am. And let's take a look. Going through turn 1. Oh, great job of keeping that car straight. And Ryan, so easy to panic there and have an issue. And quite honestly, it's what we saw Danny Formal do in the WeatherTech Championship when he had his crash. 63 now slow.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That is what happened to Formal. Dropped the wheel, and it shot him back across the track. He ended up backing it into the Armco and did extensive damage to the WeatherTech entry from Wayne Taylor Racing. Let's wonder what's going on here. This does not look like promising news, certainly for the 63. That is Matteo Cederman, who is having some problems. Hopefully he can get to a safe spot and we can stay under green.
You don't see many mechanical issues in Lamborghini Super Trofeo, and it's a testament to the strength of the car that is built. Understand, number 4 is going to have a penalty for a false start. It'll be a 10-second penalty added to the time at the end of the race. So that is the IMSA Motorsports entry of Garachi and Colin Queen. So you want to know that penalty right off the bat, don't you, Ryan? So you know if you can play some strategy to try to get a little farther up, that you can get that done. But in a 50-minute sprint race, kind of hard to make up 10 seconds.
No, right now they're just going to be hoping for green flag running so that they can build a bit of a gap and minimize what they're going to lose, as the 63 car now has pulled to a stop by the side of the track. Matteo Cederman, that is, what would that be?
Was that tower turn? Was that 13?
Yeah, I think it was. So not in a great spot at the moment. We'll see what race control elects to do. Side by side, different classes.
Oh, good stuff down into 7, and the 81 goes straight. He says, I'm in the ABS. I'm not sure I want to turn. Montero going, there's somebody there. Let's not make the matter worse than it is. Losing a position or two is a lot better than losing a car, and he just kind of stays on the brake and stays straight. Trying to see who blinked first. Oh, this is a completely different outcome. Exact same corner, Ryan. Big time damage to the 37, and this is going to bring out a full course caution. That car will not be able to move.
That's bad news for Gerasi. We were just talking about them with that penalty. The last thing they wanted was a full course yellow, but that's what we found. Ugh, that is a big, big hit, unfortunately. Adrian Kunzel, I believe, one of the 2 cars involved. Let's take a look at this here, Brian.
Oh, it looks like, is that the 42? Yeah,
yep.
That gets in there. I think gets in there so late, Ryan. Door kind of closes in front of him as the 99 pulls over, and ABS does not defy the laws of physics, right? So I think he just probably gets startled a little bit by the cars moving in front of him, completely misses his braking point, and when he does go to the brakes, like I said, anti-lock braking systems don't defy the laws of physics, could not get the car slowed down. Did a great job of peeking to the inside and going to the grass to try to avoid the collision, but eventually the cars on the outside had no idea that he was there, and it was 3 wide into a spot that maybe holds 1.5 cars. That doesn't work.
I think so. That might have been Adrian Kunzel into Clay Wilson, with Rocky T. Baldock also in that shot. The 3 cars into that narrow space there. That rarely ends well. That's a tough braking zone. It's a great passing opportunity, that's for sure, but it's very bumpy there. And perhaps that also had something to do with this ill-fated result. And yeah, day definitely done here for the 37 of Clay Wilson.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things, you talk about the bumps there, Ryan, but in addition to the bump, there's another pavement change. We talk about this racetrack being so challenging, and it's not just the bumps, it's the pavement change. And down there in that braking zone, right about the turn in for turn 7, it goes from one type of asphalt to a newer piece of asphalt that's been laid there. And every time you move across those different pavement types, you're going to lose grip. You may gain it, you may lose it, but it's going to affect the amount of grip that you have in your car. And I think the combination of just braking too late there, the pavement change being off the road, it went from bad to worse. Take a look again. See the different pavement changes. And he dives to the inside to try to avoid the collision. But like I said, 37's on the outside, doesn't even know that the 42 is there, right? I mean, that's the last thing he's expecting. He still doesn't know how that incident happened.
Oh, that has to be frustrating, especially for Rocky here, who was the innocent bystander, not really involved in that at all, and got cleaned out. Significant damage to that car, as you can see, and the team going to work there trying to at least make sure that the bodywork is clear of the right front tire so they can get the car back out. But that's three race cars used up, and this one may be the most after that collision. This is Clay Wilson off to the side. Should also mention that Matteo Cederman, that was the car we saw in strife earlier, has managed to find a safe spot according to race control. So that car out of the race, but at least was able to get to a position on the track where, at the time at least, a full course yellow was not necessitated.
Well, and this will be interesting too, Ryan, because we're closing down on what would have been the pit window, right? So it's one of those things where this is going to delay the pit window. So we've gone full course yellow, so the pits are closed for this pit window. And once they get these cars picked up, and that's the problem, it's cars, plural, they're going to have to move several of them out of the way, and it may delay this mandatory pit stop for another 5 or so minutes, maybe even as much as 10 minutes. And then the problem is driver 2 doesn't have a lot of time to get the job done.
That's true, and for some of these Pro-Am lineups in particular, where they went with their stronger driver to start, the Pro in the Pro-Am lineup, let's say, really the key to the strategy there is to try and extend as much of an advantage as possible and carry that into the second stint, and that wipes some of that away now with this yellow falling where it does. But we'll see how long the cleanup takes. At least looks like one car was able to get back to the pits. We saw the Baldock car there, so hopefully that will speed things up a bit. One thing it has also done is it's brought that fight at the front of the field back together. Danny Formal got off to such a great start from pole and had built a sizable lead, but now he's got Jaden Conright right behind him and chomping at the bit, waiting for this to go green again.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those things where Formal is going to want a good jump when they do go back to green, see if he can extend some distance before they come in. You see the 99 on pit road. You see Baldock Maple Farms there on the side of it. You like maple syrup, Ryan? Are you a pancake guy?
Yes.
You need to talk to Rocky. That's the family business, and you see that name there on the side of it. And I will tell you, it is some of the best maple syrup. I mean, I will admit I have a bottle of it at home, and this guy may be on a sugar high as well, or it could be what's in his hand. This is what Sebring's all about, right? It is spring break for racers, and he's on it. He's having a good time. Like I said, almost like a sugar high. But yeah, Rocky, not a sweet deal for him today, pardon the pun, but he had a couple of great races last year as he debuted. And, you know, one of those guys who just wants to get better and better and better. And I think it's the other thing that's interesting about Lamborghini Super Trofeo. You meet all kinds of characters. Some big tools being used down there to pry some body work away, get some separation from that left fender and that Hankook tire.
That's going to be essential to get that car back out on track. Clearly plenty of contact here in the early going. Intrepid race fans trackside, that's what really makes this place and this event so special. You don't get a road racing crowd quite like this just about anywhere else. The infield experience at Sebring is spectacular. If you've never been to the 12-hour, I can't recommend it highly enough. If you love sports car racing, this is the place to be.
Well, and how many generations did we just see in these shots? And you see some there, that young man throwing the football, and then I'm going to assume some other family members in the background, a couple of generations just in that one shot. And it's what not only Sebring is so great for, but really the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship and all of its support series as well every weekend is truly an event. And racing all throughout North America, there's ample opportunity to get you and your family to one of these. Now, that's a pretty strong mullet there, Ryan. It looks almost like yours.
Almost like mine. I don't know. I think it surpasses anything I could muster.
Yeah, that was pretty special. So you'll see all kinds of fashion ideas, I should say, here at Sebring, especially if you venture over into Green Park, which is the infield of the racetrack, kind of inside turns 5 down to 7 and back around all the way to Tower Turn. And some interesting setups. And you talk about setups. There are people who have, these guys are having fun. There are people who have setups in there. They've been coming here for years, and they rebuild small towns every time they come back. And it's selfie time. Selfie time for these lads. You have one of those loud shirts with a number on the front of it, Ryan?
Not yet, but I will by the end of this weekend.
Do they sell those here?
We're about to find out. I'll take some sartorial advice from them. That could really freshen up my wardrobe. But as it looks like we might be getting closer to a restart, did want to give a shout out real quick, Brian, to Cameron Lawrence, who's up to 6th overall, up 5 spots in the early going. It's a really strong drive from Cameron to get inside the top 10 and nearly the top 5. In fact, top 5 in class. Excited to see him with this opportunity. Really talented driver, former 24 Hours of Daytona winner, of course, about a decade ago now, amazingly. But great opportunity for him to showcase his skills, and he's done so here in the early stages.
Well, you know, we talk about the challenges of Sebring. Danny Vermael out front right now, and you mentioned it earlier, a problem that he had. We saw a car off in Lamborghini Super Trofeo at the exit of turn 1. It had a better result than this.
Yeah, this was a big one, as we said. Just dropped the wheel, almost had it caught, and then it snapped back around the other way, backed it into the barrier hard, and that caused a lengthy delay, about 20-25 minutes lost in that WeatherTech practice session. There's so much benefit to running multiple series on a given weekend, especially in platforms like the Super Trofeo car and then jumping from that into the Lamborghini GT3 car for the same team. But that's when it can bite you sometimes, is if you have a big moment like that. Fortunately, Danny was all right. He was able to jump right back into his Super Trofeo car and put the car on pole less than 90 minutes after that big accident, which speaks to his fortitude. But that definitely put the WeatherTech Championship team on the back foot. They missed extensive running here today, and they'll need to try and recover in short order.
Yeah, it's like I was saying, I think a lot of times you want to get back on the horse, but you also want to make amends to your team, and Danny Vermael is just one of those kind of guys. He's emotional. He loves his co-drivers. He loves his team. He loves his Wayne Taylor Racing family, where he's won championships the last 2 seasons. Lights out on the Lamborghini Urus safety car. So we should go back green. We'll go back green, and then I would imagine pit lane will open, and we'll start seeing pit stops. We got to get that done. Just over 31 minutes to go. The question is, with the sun beginning to set, track temperature coming down, have you taken good care of those hand-cooked tires on that Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2 you're in? You need to have kept some temperature in them, drag those brakes, create heat in the wheel, let that heat raise the temperature and the pressure of the tire, and we'll find out who's got the better car. We'll find out who's got the better nerves, Ryan, I think. The restart zone happens right at the beginning of turn 17. That's where Danny Vermael can pull the trigger. It's up to him when to go, but expect him to be on it early, I would think.
Look how close Jaden Conrad is, second car in line. He is right there, mirroring Danny Formal, waiting for the leader to go, and looks like go he does. Formal is on it. Conrad's been there keeping him honest, but the fight might be on for third and fourth, Brian.
Man, what a jump Danny Formal got, but I think you're right. Third and fourth in the order, that may be where the fight is, but again, you need to think about where you are and who you're racing with. What class are they in? This is an opportunity, though, to use that other class traffic put between yourself and your nearest competitor. Can you do it here on a restart? Pit stops are coming up.
Great getaway by Formal. Good call there as well. That third and fourth overall fight, those are cars in different classes. Jason Hart with a nice buffer. We talked about using cars from other classes as a buffer, and that's exactly what Jason has done. There are 4 Pro Class cars in between him and the second place car in the Pro-Am class, Luke Berkeley, back in 8th overall. That's great news. That means if they execute nicely in the pit stop with the driver change, that should put Conrad Geis in his series debut out in the lead and with a little bit of a margin to work with in the second half of the race.
And that's what you're looking for. And pit window is open, so expect to see stops this time by, I would think. You talked about Luke Berkeley there, second in Pro-Am, 8th on the racetrack. He is one of the returning drivers, knows how to win in this series. Impressive since he stepped foot in one of these Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2s a couple of seasons ago. And continuing that march forward, he'd like to get those Pro Class cars out of his way. But you called it perfectly, Ryan. Jason Hart's done a spectacular job placing 4 other Lamborghinis between himself and Berkeley back in 8th. So used to seeing Jason Hart, though, in something yellow, white, and black. I get confused. And look at this blocking going on. This is aggressive blocking. It'll be interesting to see what race control has to say about that. Good battle here, and I believe that's Bamber aboard the 29. It is, and the 8 outside of Nick Persing. Bamber really using all the road there to the right. The question was it a move in response to Persing trying to go around him, or did he take that line early off the corner?
Now the race director and the stewards will take a look at that for sure, but as mentioned, pit lane is open. Meanwhile, 3 wide into 1.
Look at this. Look at this, and a little twitch for Berkeley there. Second car in the shot, that bright blue machine, and that is going to invite the 4th car in the order into this fray. It's the 30 of Hayes back there, the 4th car in the line. He was several car lengths back, and then that side-by-side action into 1 allowed him to close right up.
Oh man, that was outstanding. Great job to give each other just enough space to make it work in turn 1. It's so wide on entry, but narrows on exit. This is what we're looking at, just outside the top 5 in the overall order, running nose to tail here, and it is a maelstrom just before presumably the pit stops for these cars as we are into the pit window.
Al Morey aboard the 77, the lead car in this 4-car train, trying to hold them off, able to pull out a little bit, gets a good jump off of turn 10. Luke Berkeley behind, doesn't get near the run, and I'm wondering if Berkeley has a really good Lamborghini underneath them or not, because the 44 of Foster right there behind him, waiting to pounce. For Wyatt Foster, he's kind of queued up the Jaws music, Ryan. He's got the pressure on Berkeley.
He's right there, isn't he? But he can't just focus on Berkeley because he's got Nicky Hayes right behind. Nicky's been really strong here so far this weekend. The IMSA Diverse Driver Development Scholarship finalist of a year ago. Looking really stout with the ANSA Motorsports team. It's the 3rd car in this line, the white car, giving chase as these 2 battle for position. 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in Pro-Am, all running nose to tail.
Who's coming in? None of these cars are coming in. They stay out on the racetrack. Morey has been able to extend his margin over Berkeley by several car lengths. Again, that is not for position in class, but you got to use those other cars as a pick sometime. And the 30, that white and maroon number 30 of Hayes, all over the back of the 44 of Foster. Tell you what, somebody else
fantastic.
is coming to the party. Kleck is back there in the 27. He's closed in.
Yeah, why not make it a four-way fight here, as if 3 wasn't fun enough. And we've got 25 more minutes of this still to come. The second half of this race, too, is going to get very interesting because you've got some Pro-Am lineups that are starting their pros, which means they've got some strong track position, but some less experienced drivers are about to jump in, and we're going to have to see how they fare with some fast cars behind them or cars in the Pro-Am class on a different strategy, maybe coming up through the field. Big move here into turn 7. That was Hayes.
That was
fantastic.
Nice. That was nice, Ryan.
Yeah, got it done under the brakes there into turn 7. Great passing opportunity. That's one part of this track that has changed some over the years. They've changed the hairpin and shortened that part of the track. I once heard somebody refer to it as the safety pin because they shortened it to provide a little bit of runoff for an added safety benefit. I kind of thought that was catchy. I'm not sure if it'll catch on or not, but we can try.
It looked, I will tell you, oh, look at this look. 27, that's Cole Kleck. He was impressive last year. He was almost real impressive right there. I can tell you from running here, before it was shortened, it looked like the end of the world when you came down there, because it basically was. It was the racetrack, and then it wasn't. And when it wasn't, it was a wall. Now Kleck looks to the inside. He's got the inside. Can he hold it? And can he get a good enough run off the corner to get the position at turn 1? The 44 Foster on the inside. They are side by side, wheel to wheel, Hankook to Hankook, down to turn 1.
And trouble is, the track goes away from him there. He was stuck on the outside. Tried to get the crossover to go, but pretty well held, all things considered, on the inside there by Foster, who will hold on to this position. This is the fight here for 4th and 5th in Pro-Am. Really good stuff from these two drivers.
And good racing as well. It's very respectful racing that I've seen over these last several laps after the restart. And the great pass that we saw down in turn 10, more of it coming here. Lap traffic now in the way. Kleck uses it to his advantage.
Yeah, that was well read for sure. They came up on some lap traffic right out of the pits that looked like on an outlap maybe, and that car very tentative. And certainly Kleck seemed to read that better. Got to the inside, used the car as a pick, and got a position.
Out of turn 10, snaking over towards Tower. Lurking in the background there. Hayes sizes up Berkeley, and that is a power move right there. What a move. It is difficult to get done there. The braking isn't particularly heavy into 13. You do have to slow the car down, and the car is imbalanced. It's never straight in the brake zone. You've got to be confident. You've got to be confident in your ability. You've got to be confident in your car, and that is exactly what we saw out of Nicky Hayes right there. What a move.
No lack of confidence, that's for sure. Just sent it up the inside, got alongside into the braking zone, and at that point, once they got to the apex, it was deal done. Really, really clever maneuver there, and daring as well.
All right, more cars heading into pit lane, and I believe that is our leader. In fact, it is. Danny Vermael brings his Wayne Taylor Racing Lamborghini's Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2, the Lamborghini Palm Beach logos on that car as well, brings it to a stop, and he'll hand it over now. Maiden run in North America for this young man, Hampus Eriksson. What do you think is going through his mind? Not only is he about to get in for the first time in a race here in Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America, but his car's in the lead. What kind of pressure is that, Ryan?
Well, I think he's used to it. That's the good news. He had a really good run in the European Championship last year. Very, very nearly won the World Final in the Pro Class at Jerez last year. He split the results with Igor Arutchev, and the tiebreaker was fastest lap across the two races in the World Final. So effectively, he lost the World Final by a fraction of a second, the way that the tiebreaker broke down a season ago. But focusing here now on his career in North America, I think he's just excited from talking to him earlier, embracing the challenge, and he's got a proud brother and father here watching on too, with his Indy 500 winning brother Marcus Ericsson trackside this week.
inside a minute and a half left to go in the pit window. You need to get it done. If you just started a lap, you may be in trouble. Lap times just over 2 minutes. 2 minutes, 5 seconds, 2 minutes, 6 seconds. So if you started a lap the last time by, it could be a problem. You got to get in. You've got to get that pit stop done within the window. The one is down and away, and you talk about the different total time on pit lane. 93 seconds for 2-driver format, 96 seconds for a 1-driver format. And that is from the time you cross the beam at pit in until you cross the beam at pit out. It's not the time that the car sits stationary on pit lane.
Yeah, that's right. You don't have to get the job done, but you must be in the pit lane prior to the pit window closing, and then it is that 93 or 96 seconds transit time with the stop and driver change as well that gets factored in. We'll see who executes on this. Looks like everybody has shown as having made a pit stop. Luke Berkeley was the last to do so, just snuck in the nick of time. But looks like everybody should be doing what they need to do as far as the regulations are concerned now the pit window officially closed.
Well, and there'll be some penalties handed out at the end of the race. We talked about some of those already. Car 42 will have a penalty for incident responsibility. We saw that down in turn 7 with the 37 and the 99. And car 67 will have a penalty for a pit speed violation, +4 over. That'll be a drive-through penalty. Talk about the length of the pit stop. Sometimes if you're a little slow on the driver change, you get in a hurry and you don't get to that pit speed limiter button, or you release it a little bit too soon and you get caught. And it doesn't matter whether it's a mile an hour over or 5 miles an hour over. I'm sure it probably matters if it's 10. They're not going to smile at that. But if you get caught speeding, you get caught speeding. 28 is in.
Yeah, this was the last of the front runners to make the stop. They got in just in the nick of time. Great job by the team to maximize what they had. So Berkeley has made his stop. And the driver change over to Tyler Hoffman complete. And with that, the number 1, the pole-sitting car, cycles back through to the lead. So this is the car that Danny Formal started. Hampus Eriksson now driving.
Oh, whoa. It's just every time you see that, it just takes your breath away. And that's Scott Huffaker, and that's taking my breath away watching it. What do you think it does to the driver that's sitting in the seat? I think you're sitting there going, come on, baby, come on, stay with me.
Yeah, I'd prefer not to think too hard about what must have been going through his mind. That would have been uncomfortable, to say the least. And this is a driver, Brian, as we look at it again, this is a 3-time Sebring 12-hour class winner, Scott Huffaker. He knows what it takes to go around this place fast and win the big race here. Brings that experience to the table. He's pushing that 22 machine for all it's worth.
And if you're a race fan at home and you've got a simulator at home, then you have some kind of idea what turn 1 is like. You may sense the bumps through the steering wheel if you've got force feedback in your wheel and so on and so forth, but you cannot sense it like you do in the race car. You see the movement there, and really from about all the way to the apex, you cannot see the exit of the corner. And it's just, did I turn in at the right place? Am I on the right line? Does the sight picture look correct? If so, I'm going back to the throttle, and you hope you were right with all that read you had in the first half of the corner, because the first half is going to dictate the second half of the corner, and you'd better be in the right spot.
Brian, in your time racing here, which did you find more challenging, turn 1 or turn 17?
Well, here's the thing, Ryan. I will admit this. I have never raced on the entire racetrack. Did a lot of IndyCar testing on the infield course where we use most of the racetrack. A problem on the racetrack for the 28. That's not what you wanted to see after such a good run that they had going on. But yeah, I never did it. I went through it when I worked for Skip Barber back in the day, but I never raced the 12 hours, so never ran the full course.
Well, that comes as a surprise to me. That was the outlet, by the way, for Hoffman, who just had the 360 spin and was able to continue on. Lost a little bit of track position, but generally able to keep going. Right.
Yeah, it's great to see Tyler back in a car, Ryan, because it's been several years. Great coach, really knows the game. Good race car driver, but you've got to get back in, and you're going to have some struggles when you do get back in if you haven't been playing, quote, at speed over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, for sure. To get back up to speed, it's difficult in any circumstance, but these Lamborghini Super Trofeo cars are unforgiving. You talk about the power that they produce. They do make some downforce, but they're still a handful to drive. I think that's part of the appeal, quite frankly, of the championship. This is a fantastic beast of a race car, but to just jump back in if you've been on the sideline for a while, that's a real challenge to try and take on right here in this series in particular.
Well, I think it is one of the allures to it. It's a very different car to drive, and everybody that you talk to, it's one of the reasons I was so impressed with Jason Hart early on. The Porsches that he's used to driving, and you see the 88 dropping wheels there at the apex coming off of the hairpin. Even though the Porsche that he drives is somewhat mid-engine, the Cayman, it has far less horsepower than the Lamborghini has, and it's a completely different animal. The Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2 that runs here is actually faster than the GT3 Lamborghini that we see in the WeatherTech. It's faster in a straight line. It has less aerodynamics on it, so the horsepower that it produces is able to push a cleaner car through the air. What does that mean? It means higher speed. What does it mean at the other end of the straightaway? Less braking capability because of less downforce. So now you got to really fight through the corner. So it is a beast of a car to drive. And for Ericsson, he is not holding anything back, dropping the wheel there at the exit of turn one like he's got thousands of laps around this racetrack.
Just did that car's best first sector, interestingly enough. And the first sector here at Sebring is effectively start-finish through turn one. It's a really short sector. He's doing that on halfway through a race, used hand cooks here. New track for him. Fantastic. He's been a quick study. He's got really high expectations, and so does the whole family. I talked with Marcus a little bit earlier in the weekend, and he said that he had driven, of course, for Wayne in the Rolex 24 in the past, and had that relationship, maybe helped to make the connection, but they really feel like this is a great spot for Hampus as he turns his focus to North American racing.
Well, I've talked about this over the last several seasons. There was a point in time, I believe, that Lamborghini Super Trofeo was just kind of looked at as a playground for people just go drive really exotic cars and, quote, race. That is a long time ago, because over the last 5 or 6 seasons, it has turned into a breeding ground for some of the future stars of the sport. And I think it's one of the super cool things. You don't get to go play football in an NFL game with Patrick Mahomes, right? You don't get to do that. Here you do. You get to, as an amateur, perhaps in LB Cup, go out and run with guys like Danny Formal, who have run in the WeatherTech series at the Rolex 24 here at Sebring. People who are future stars of the sport. You're on the same playing field at the same time, and by the way, in the same equipment. So if you want to start getting attention and you want to go show what you're worth in a race car, I think Lamborghini Super Trofeo is the way to go.
Especially because of the way that Lamborghini has been inward looking in terms of driver development. If they notice someone having success in their single make series, whether it's here in North America or in Europe or in Asia, they are going to promote from within. They've done a really good job of that over the years. We have several instances of drivers that have come through their young driver platform and received some support as a consequence in this championship, in the WeatherTech championship, now maybe driving for other brands, but they were really helped along the way by Lamborghini. They're taking a page out of some of the other manufacturers' playbook with that, but I think maybe taking it further with the way that they have been utterly committed to their young driver program. So if you are an up-and-comer, why not come to Super Trofeo? You get to drive an amazing car on some great racetracks with big crowds for the WeatherTech Championship surrounding you, plus the allure of the season finale being in Europe with the World Final. What's not to love?
Absolutely, and we talked at the beginning of the show about familiar faces that are here. Nick Grote, Anthony McIntosh, former champions, LB Cup for Grote, McIntosh in AM, but we talked about a new group of drivers coming in, and you see that right now in the leaders in the Pro and the Pro-Am category. Ericsson up front in Pro, and we talk about it has attracted young up-and-coming drivers, and they've come from all over the world to compete here, and I just think it's so cool to watch it happen.
Yeah, definitely. This is a car to keep an eye on this year. We were watching Brendan Leach a moment ago, the Kiwi, and he's a perfect example of what I was talking about earlier. He was someone that was spotted in Super Trofeo, and he has been a stalwart of Lamborghini programs, whether it's at the Super Trofeo level or the GT3 level, all around the world. Really quite a boon for the North American Championship to get a driver of his caliber here, and he's now leading in the Pro-Am class at the moment in the car that he shares with Anthony McIntosh. I think that's a pairing that should very, very likely contend for a title here this year.
Love the look of this car, the number 10. Glenn McGee behind the wheel, and just always, always on it. Like I said, multi-time champion. He and Anthony McIntosh won championship in AM back-to-back, and he's back again. Much to, I'm sure, the chagrin of some of his competitors. They were like, can't you go do something else? Maybe take up golf or something like that, but nothing doing there. So just great to see. And again, it's drivers who have been here, and then the new breed of drivers that are coming in. And for McGee, really getting the job done, stays impressive just as he's been over the last couple of seasons.
He has, and not just in Super Trofeo, he also won an Italian GT championship last year, did Glenn McGee. Had a lot of success at the World Final. He's a former AM-Class champion there. And then the 2 championships now in Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America back-to-back coming into this season. He's got high hopes, and why not? Right now, well in control of the AM-Class, running very competitively, 9th overall.
Well, and you look back in LB Cup, talk about drivers who have been here before. Grote leads, he's a former champion. Mark Brumman just behind him. Really, really impressive last year. His driving has improved, running in several different series throughout North America, and now running second here at Sebring. Feather in his cap there, but feather in the cap of everybody at Wayne Taylor Racing. Danny Formal bouncing back from the problem that he had in the WeatherTech series and putting the car on pole, doing what he needed to do to make sure he had a good setup on it. And think about Hampus Eriksson, not only new to this team and this racetrack, but he's got a driver like Danny Formal to lean on to get some pointers about how to get around this racetrack fast. And obviously he is a very, very quick study getting it done. You see the rear of that car moving around, the Hancooks holding on like fingernails trying to dig into the tarmac there. But this team has been so strong over the years, the number of championships they've won, and I think Hampus Eriksson has found a home. He certainly looks comfortable, like he's in an old shoe.
Yeah, definitely. This looks very promising for the season to come. He's only built the advantage. He inherited one, of course, at the pit stop, but he's now been able to extend it up to 5.5 seconds over Elias De La Torre, the Key Largo, Florida native, who's actually given his car a pretty nice run there in the 2nd spot, then Scott Huffaker 3rd. But that gap just continues to grow. Eriksson doing a tremendous job behind the wheel, but Danny Formal, too, made sure to save enough of those tires for his teammate in the 2nd half of the race. And he knows that the shoe's going to be on the other foot tomorrow. It'll be Hampus's job to make sure there's tire left for Danny to go to the finish. I think that's one of the unique elements of this series, where you run one set of tires the whole race, but you split it between the 2 drivers. And there's a lot of emphasis on driver 1 in the lineup to make sure you preserve a little something to fight with there in the 2nd stint and don't leave your teammate out to dry.
Well, it is one of the other cool things about this series, like you said, and it really plays into WeatherTech as well, but most of the time in WeatherTech and endurance racing, when you change drivers, you change tires. Here, that is not the case, so you need to have left a little something for your teammate. It's great to go build a big lead, but if you used everything in getting there, that's an issue. De La Torre trying to hold on and move forward, but Eriksson just putting on a clinic out front. Scott Huffaker still close enough to De La Torre that if he has an issue, Huffaker can do something with it. And Nick Persing, that rounds out the top 4. Talk about leak in Pro-Am. Mark Miller just behind him in the 41, doing a great job. Good to see Mark in the series. I think he'll be full-time this year with Flying Lizard, he and Paul Nimshoff. And they can be a driver pairing to be dealt with. But look there in third in Pro-Am. More new drivers to the series. Darius Trinka and Tadas Karlinkas. I mean, two guys those are not household names here in North America, but they've come over and they're making their presence known in Lamborghini.
They might be by the end of the year with the way that they're running here right now. That was an issue we caught the tail end of there. Sebastian Carranzo appeared to have a moment. I think we've got to look at it here. Sends it up the inside and spun himself out to avoid contact, it would appear.
I think he realized that was an ill-advised move about halfway in, but the problem for Sebastian Carranzo is once you're halfway in, the nose of the car is so loaded, if you continue to slow down to avoid hitting the car in front of you, you're just putting more and more weight on that left front tire, and that's going to loosen up the back, and around you go. Good job of staying out of the side of the car that he was looking up the inside of, but he'd like to have that one back.
Watching a battle further back in the pack, the middle car in this trio, the 67, that was the erstwhile leader in Pro-Am. Jason Hart started the car. Conrad Geiss driving now. Jason, the more experienced of the two. This is just the second season of motorsports for Conrad, but he's an interesting story because both his dad and his mom did some racing when they were younger, but it took Conrad quite a while to get his first chance to get behind the wheel. Did so last year in another single-make series, and now making a big step up to Super Trofeo. But he's got a great co-driver, as we saw, in Jason Hart, and he showed some aptitude last year in some of the other racing that he's done, and I do wonder.
Ooh, there's a mistake.
Yep, and he might be able to pounce on it here. He's looking quite strong. I do wonder if he gets a little more comfortable with this car, if this isn't a lineup that can challenge towards the front of the class as the year progresses.
Soroka aboard the number 26 is not comfortable in his car, I can tell you that. Looking at kind of the language of that Alliance Racing Lamborghini Palm Beach entry, that car not happy right now, and Robert Soroka really has his hands full, not only of the Lamborghini that he's piloting, but he's got pressure from behind as well.
He does indeed. Right behind him is Jim Hepworth for the Rafa Racing team. Shares that car with former Indy Next driver Lindsey Brewer. Jim Hepworth, a veteran of the GT4 European Series in recent seasons, a former Brit Car Endurance Series champion as well, driving a Praga, which must have been an experience. Really strong driver. I'm excited to see what that pairing can do.
He's down to the inside, headed into 17 that time, kind of blocking off the inside, saying, hey, don't think about it. But really what that does is just slows your entry and allows the other car to actually stay closer than it would have if you had run a really solid line through the corner. And a lot of times so tempting when you've got a car that is beginning to go away from you, and a problem for the 68.
Yeah, that was a front runner actually, 8th overall, 7th in pro. That's Werner Nugbauer. That's had a spin. Is going to drop them well down the order. It's a real shame.
Understand he and Kiwan Tandon were having a battle, and he looks to the inside. Tandon goes wide. Yeah, Tandon went wide, and I don't think he knew that Nugbauer was there. You know, and I don't think that was Werner's fault at all. He takes advantage of a car that's going wide, and then Tandon just kind of comes back online. And much like we saw up in turn 15 and 16 a couple of laps ago with Carrazzo, you get in there and you're trying to avoid contact, and it comes to a point where you're either going to hit the other car or you're going to spin yourself, and that's exactly the problem that Nugbauer had.
I hate to see a top 10 run go away like that. We'll see just how much it cost him. Or some pretty big gaps behind that battle, so maybe the position loss will be negligible, but certainly not the way that you want to see the race come to a close after such a strong start.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, they're going to go back and they'll look at that. They'll look at their onboard cameras and such after this race. And Cameron Lawrence, his teammate, such a good race car driver himself and such a good coach. And that's the thing that's magical about guys like Cameron. Not only can you get it done in the race car, but you can translate that information, that feeling, to another driver. There are a lot of drivers who can drive a car well, but they can't teach, and there are other drivers who can teach, but the student may be as fast as they are in the car. So when you've got one that can do both, that's a pretty special thing. And Cameron Lawrence and Werner will go back and they'll look at this after the race, and they'll come up with a better answer for the future.
That is a real skill, to be able to convey a lifetime of lessons and kind of boil it down into something palatable for an up-and-comer. That's the real challenge when you're coaching someone relatively new to motorsports, and there are quite a few drivers in this paddock that excel at doing that.
Yeah, that incident down there between the 77 of Tandon and the 68 of Nürnberger has been reviewed, and there is no action. I didn't think there would be. It's kind of just one of those deals where Tandon's trying to stay on the racetrack. He made a mistake. He tries to stay on the racetrack. Nürnberger thinks he can, then he realizes maybe I can't, and it's just kind of one of those awkward things like on the sidewalk when you're coming up to somebody, right, Ryan? And you move one way and they move the same, and you kind of do that little dance step, and then you go on your way, and that's exactly what those two drivers have done. They've gone on their way.
Well, that's the good news. No one really suffered too much from it. Of course, track position lost, but that could have been more disastrous, to say the least. Able to continue on, that's the important thing. As we enter the final lap here, Hampus Eriksson has built that lead, Brian, to 9.7 seconds, but behind him, battles aplenty in this 36-car field.
Yeah, and think about what you just said as far as the 36-car field goes. I mean, it's one of those deals where this series has grown and grown and grown. It used to be that, hey, if you got 28 cars, it was a record. Then it was, okay, now we have 29. Well, that's a record. Now we have 30. Well, that's a record. Then it's 32, then 34, then 36. And so it's like, when you've built something that's special, people want to be a part of it. And that's why Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America has grown so much. Danny Formal wants to be a part of it. He's in pit lane right now. You think he's nervous?
Maybe a little bit, yeah, watching his teammate, but not much to be nervous about. This seems like it's been a cruise for Hampus Eriksson. He's been fast. He set the fastest lap of the race about 10 minutes or so ago on used tires. Now, admittedly, they burned off some of the fuel, so the car will be more or less at its lightest point right now, but he is still pushing hard, turning in great lap times, and he has seen his lead over Elias De La Torre balloon. It's been a tremendous debut for the Swedish driver and his Costa Rican teammate. They're just one corner away now.
Danny Formal, back-to-back championships with Kyle Marcelli, 22 and 23, and Wayne Taylor Racing. This time, he hands the victory. He hands the keys to the checkered flag to his teammate. Hampus Eriksson takes the checkered flag. Wayne Taylor Racing and his co-driver Danny Formal, they will celebrate at Sebring.
Fantastic result for them, and a big bounce back, as we've chronicled multiple times, for Danny after the mishap in the WeatherTech session earlier today. Leader in the Pro-Am class, Brendan Leach, the Kiwi, who's coming here stateside to compete this year. He's won multiple championships in Lamborghinis all around the world. This seemed like a wonderful fit when it was announced, and here he is coming stateside to go for a title alongside Anthony McIntosh. The Wayne Taylor Racing team will also take the Pro-Am victory here at Sebring International Raceway.
Great stuff, and you look at Wayne Taylor Racing, and so impressive have they been. You talk about Pro and Pro-Am. What about the Am category? Because Glenn McGee in that beautiful reflective silver livery, number 10, coast through turn 1. He's a winner here at Sebring, and Wayne Taylor Racing chalks up another victory at Sebring.
How about that? 3 for 3. Doesn't look like it'll be a sweep of all 4 classes, however, because Nick Grote is in control, driving for One Motorsports. Pole sitter for race number 1. Mark Brummond was the pole sitter for race 2, so Nick's going to have a little work to do if he's going to make it a clean sweep of the weekend tomorrow. But this has been a really strong performance. He's got a nice buffer back to Brummond here as he comes out of Sunset Bend for the final time and sees the checkered flag. Driving solo, it's an LB Cup win for Nick Grote.
Nick Grote picking right up where he left off from 2024, right, Ryan? I mean, great racing here at Sebring. This racetrack kind of lends itself to it. So does that Lamborghini Huracan. Such a great race car, and this is a great racetrack for it. Love the 4 different classes, and really interesting to see the new drivers in the series this year. There are going to be more stories to tell, but right now it's all about, yep, we're going to drive offline and pick up some rubber to make sure everything's copacetic intact when we come back in. You talk about the great drive for Ericsson and Formal. They take the win overall, but what a day for Wayne Taylor Racing.
Yeah, unbelievable with those 3 wins in the 3 different classes. Domination at the very front of the field, though. Ericsson and Formal look like a potent pairing.
Absolutely. That's the top 10 unofficial results. Moving on to the second page, you continue to work through the classes. And look at the AM category. Look at Jackson Lee and Chris Tosca. They finished third. Their first pairing together. They have a podium finish in the AM category. Good run for them, and all kinds of stories throughout. Like I said, I think a lot of lessons learned here. And then you get back to LB Cup. Nick Grote takes the win there. But like I talked about earlier, Mark Brumman, he continues to impress in his trajectory in his driving career.
And he's on pole for race number 2. He's been really fast this weekend within that class, so would not be at all surprised to see him have some success. And you mentioned the podium for Jackson Lee and Chris Tasca. That's the first career podium for Chris in Super Trofeo. That was his goal coming into the weekend. He checks that box in race number 1 in the Fly Alliance machine. Congratulations to the pair of them.
You know what other box we can check? Race number 1 of 2025 is in the books. Race number 2 comes up tomorrow, though, Ryan. And I think the good thing for these drivers is it's at the same kind of time of day, so I would think conditions would be similar.
That should help the teams. It should help the drivers. They should be able to carry what they learned here in race 1 today into race 2. And for especially the Pro-Am teams that elected to start their pro today, the shoe is on the other foot tomorrow. We're going to see a reshuffled lineup when you look at the starting grid for race number 2, but it sets up to be another thriller.
Should be a good one from right here at Sebring. Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America, 5 rounds here in the United States, and then the World Final this year in Misano, Italy in November. But that's a long way away. A lot of laps, a lot of racing yet to go. We'll do it all again tomorrow. For Ryan Marine, I'm Brian Till. Thanks for joining us. Come back and join us again tomorrow for more Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America from right here at the iconic Sebring International Raceway. We'll see you tomorrow, everyone. So long.